Hello everyone. It is wet and miserable today. Your classic British grey, cloudy, damp day. Rubbish. The only way to improve that situation is to build some amplifiers, right? So I'm cracking on with some boards. I'm going to populate them now. And I thought, while we're doing that, we'll get the Q&A done because I haven't got round to it yet. So we better crack on. We'll start with, actually, we had loads and loads of comments and questions over the past week or so. So I'm going to do quite a few of them this time round. Sometimes I only do 4 or 5, but I've got loads to do. So I'm going to try and get through more comments and questions with shorter answers because you know how much I love to waffle on. But we're not going to do that this time. I'm going to try and get through more of the comments and questions. So TG Vet says, "Hi Chris, on your Bassman 100 project, which I have been thinking of doing one myself. I am a guitar player only, and if you were doing one for guitar, which 2 preamp sections would you use? My favourite is from a 90s dual professional and maybe something more like a tweed style for a second channel." You could put anything in there really in the second channel if that's what you wanted to do. I would probably go for what I know works best anyway, which is what I did for Ollie with his 50-watt Bassman, the silver panel one, which was black panel on one side and then blonde on the other. So there's still 2 Bassman channels that both sound good in their own right. They are familiar enough that people know what they are and it doesn't sound too strange and odd. So it's not too much of a diversion from what people are expecting to hear. And they work really well when you blend the 2 together. So that's what I would do. I'd probably just start with that. Keep it simple because you know the result is going to be good. Sean says, "Quick question. What would cause a lopsided sine wave on the output? It has a normal sloped wave on one side. Are you going up? But a steeper slope going down. Swapping power tubes didn't change anything. Have you seen this before?" I have seen it before, but there can be many causes of it. I'm assuming that when you say power tubes, it's a push-pull amplifier, so you've got more than one, i.e. it's not single-ended, although it could be parallel. I'm guessing, just throwing it out there, it could be parallel single-ended, so you've got 2 output valves in parallel in a single-ended configuration. So the cause of that would be different to the one that's a push-pull amplifier. Quite often you've got a phasing issue, and the cause of that could be a number of things. Could be a problem with negative feedback if the amp has got it. You'll need to signal trace through the amplifier to follow your sine wave through and find the part of the circuit where the sine wave is normal. Can't find my words today. And then after whatever your gain stage is or your phase inverter or wherever it is, see if you can find where it changes, and then you'll zone in on the area of the circuit that's causing it. And then just do your basic idiot checks. So, are all my resistors in spec? Do I have any leaky caps? If I have negative feedback, if I disconnect it, or if I vary the level of negative feedback, does that change it? If it's got a presence control or a resonance control, again, you need to check these things. Just go through the basic checks and process, but you haven't stated what amplifier it is. You haven't stated any of the basic configuration that I would need to be able to give you more information. But divide and conquer. It's the same rule for most diagnoses, right? Do the basics, gather your information, find out exactly what's happening in your amp, where it's happening, take your measurements, and quite often you will discover the problem. You'll stumble across the problem and often a solution. I often say to people that in guitar amp repair, by the time you know what the problem is or what the problem was, you've fixed it. You found the problem. Because often it's a case of trial and error. It's a case of confirming things and going through that process. So sometimes it's difficult to quote for repairs because you've got to go through that process. And as I said, by the time you've confirmed what the problem was, you've often fixed it already. 220Ks. Dominic Johnson, welcome back to the channel, mate, says, hi there, Chris, love the channel. Question, how do you strip shielded cable? Always found it tricky. Cheers, Dom. Yeah, so I'll show you how I do it. But there's going to be a load of caveats in this, so take it as it's intended, and take it as I present it, but your mileage will of course vary. So when it comes to stripping insulation, I always use the crocodile or alligator jaw strippers. I don't like the other type. I've never got on with them, and I've never got the result I want or need from those. I have these set to its weakest strength, as it were. So I have the adjuster backed all the way off. And what I do is if I place the wire in bang central, it often cuts it too much. But what I found with the jaws on these, and this is an experimenting thing, is I know that the jaws in this aren't parallel to each other as they come down to cut. They're actually, the top half is like that. So I always cut on this side where there's more of a clearance. So I cut right on the very edge, you see, so it's over to one side rather than being in the middle. And when I do it, I am super gentle and slow with it. And I get a really nice cut. And that's how I do it. It's as simple as that. Now, that comes down to one thing, and that's knowing your tools. Knowing how your tools work, what their strengths are and what their weaknesses are. When you have an understanding of that, you can achieve these things. Like if I wind the adjuster all the way the other way, you can see how much adjustment there is in these things. And I have a go again, and I just do that, it doesn't cut nicely. So I know with my tools, I know exactly where I need to adjust them and how to use them. The other thing I'm doing, which isn't often explained, back that off, is when I've got my wire in there and the tool starts to grab the outer sheathing, I'm providing a little back pressure. So I'm providing tension that way as well. Because I know, let me just snip that short again. If I just do it without, I don't get a nice cut. So it just comes down to understanding your tools, knowing how to use them. But that's how I do it. I went through a stage of really struggling. I used to use a different type of shielded cable, shielded wire, and that I would often break when I would strip it back, the internal strands for the shielding would often break. And I had a nightmare with it. But over time I've developed that I know for this stuff, so I always buy the same stuff. And I always use this pair as lightly as possible and in the wide side of the jaw, because it's just the way these ones are. And I always, okay, that's a lie, 99% of the time I get a nice cut. Really consistent results now. Hopefully that helps. Balin says, talking of the wax boards, I think we're talking about the twin reverb here. He says, and given everything has a capacitance rating to some degree, can the board material have an effect on the overall sound of the amplifier? The material itself, probably not. Well, I mean, probably so, but whether you could hear it or measure it is up for debate. If there was, you might argue that the thickness of the material you choose to use therefore might make a difference. The spacing between your components therefore might make a difference as well. And therefore your argument is, well, how do I make that consistent? And can I get consistent results over a large sample size over a large period of time, right? So I would argue that if you're looking into that, you're probably wasting your time, to be honest. I mean, yes, there maybe is a difference, but you'd be looking on an individual case-by-case basis, would be my point on there. The tolerance in the components that we use, whether it's 1, 5, 10 or 20%, will be larger, will have more of a difference, will create a bigger difference in sample-to-sample difference than the board material ever will. 56k. Villas or Viles says, did you check Banzai music for those Panasonic caps and Marshall handles? 56 is green and blue, isn't it? Yeah, you get stuff from out of country, no problem. But often when ordering from Europe, the UK suffered Brexit, so our import situation is more expensive, more difficult, and unless you're doing large multiple orders, some of these companies that now have minimum orders for exporting. So Tubetown to the UK, I think the minimum order is 150 euros. So you're not just going to order 1 or 2 bits at a time. You need to be placing substantial orders to actually make it worth your while. But then you're going to, you've got your import duties and taxes and stuff. So ordering, one-off bits from the continent now is pretty prohibitive. So again, unless I'm ordering, I regularly place large valve orders with TAD in Germany. And if there's anything else I need at the time that I can stick onto that order, I will do. But for one-off stuff, it just doesn't work. So yeah, Banzai stocks that stuff, but for 1 or 2 orders. Anyway, the Panasonic caps have arrived. They did come in, which is good news, which is why I'm cracking on with these boards. Heiko or Hakon Moan. Anyway, good Sunday, Chris, he says. I just wanted to let you know I really think you have done so many smart choices to this channel and the content you share. I've only spent the last 9 or 10 years or so building myself a few amplifiers, and I was on the lookout for resources online even before that. D-Lab and Uncle Doug were my go-tos back then. Both great channels, by the way. But your channel is a level up. Well, that's very kind of you to say. A real vitamin boost. Your attention to detail keeps me checking myself and makes me aim higher. Well, that's very kind of you to say. One of the goals of this channel is to help raise the game of everybody, whether pros or just home builders itself, and I get as much out of YouTube as I give. So I will often see tips and tricks from other people, and that helps me raise my game. And hopefully I'm helping to raise the game of others too. And that's what we want. We want everyone to improve, and because that then improves the quality of the stuff that's out there, whether that's from a tonal point or from a safety point, right? We just want better amplifiers out there for all. Regular commenter Watkins Copycat says, love the croc, like the brown Alicockagator Ainsley Sig. How about a Selmer-inspired model? Could you use your riff badge as a tremolo blinking eye thing? So I did have an amp in my lineup that did the whole Selmer Watkins thing. It was called the Hawker. And it did okay, it was great, but sales kind of drop off, and then when it comes to reordering parts and stocking bits, it got to the point where I think that amp had kind of reached the end of its line. I did want to bring it back with onboard reverb, but we never got around to it. Maybe in the future. The thing is, you have to... There's always 2 ways of looking at it, right? So you can only really offer what's popular because that's what keeps the business going, right? But also, the other side of that coin is if you don't offer it, you can't sell it. So then you have to have stuff that's kind of less popular, but, occasionally people might want. And that's kind of the beauty of building stuff to order, is that if somebody comes along and says, I see you used to do these, would you build me one? I can always say yes, if I can make things work. But I can also turn down the work if it's just not going to be feasible from whether a financial standpoint or an engineering standpoint or whatever. I mean, it's the upside of being a small business, but it's also the downside is that when stuff doesn't sell, then I can make the decision not to reinvest into that product line, because otherwise I'll sit on that financial outlay for a long time in order to get my money back. So yeah, there you go. Dr. Kev Guitar, channel member, welcome back, mate. He says, hi Chris, when you run an amp up to temperature on the bench, is it really up to temperature? When the chassis is in the cab head, it's enclosed and has a greatly reduced airflow. Its final temp will be reached faster and will be hotter than sitting on the bench. I always put a piece of cardboard across the top of an open chassis to help it get the temperature up. Do you think that's unnecessary? Thanks so much. It's just a figure of speech, Kev. What I mean by that is that the amp is on and the electrical circuits inside have settled down. The valves are up to their standard operating temperature. The resistors have, especially in the power supply, they're up to temperature. Any current running through them is stabilised. It's just that the amp isn't in a cold condition. That's all I really mean. And often, 15, 20 minutes just idling away on the bench is enough. To get the circuit where I want it to be. If you've ever measured and monitored the bias voltage on a Marshall-style bias circuit from cold, you'll notice that it does take a long time to settle down. Sometimes it's more than 30 seconds, often a lot longer. So that's a good thing to actually do, is to experiment with that and see, well, even in standby mode, how long does it take for that bias circuit to reach its set point? You'll be surprised how long it can actually take. So when I say I'm bringing it up to temperature, I just mean that it's not cold anymore and that it's kind of settled down to where it wants to be, and I can then take repeatable, accurate measurements with it. 220k. Sorry, Hannowworth says, hi Chris, why don't you use new eyelet boards for the twin reverb? I know Tad sells these, great channel. You must be new here, and welcome. Yes, that'd be the simple, easy solution, wouldn't it? Is to buy another piece of cheap Forbon or Forbon, or whatever it's called. I know the Americans use a different name for it. But we would only ever be building in the same problem that the amp already has, which these boards, as you can see, or this material that Fender originally used, is incredibly thin and flexible. It absorbs moisture, so it becomes conductive quite quickly, in fact. And Fender knew this, or Fender discovered this, so that's why they started covering these in wax. They didn't have a new material. They just took the boards, covered them in wax to stop them taking on moisture. What they didn't know at the time was that the wax itself would become conductive. So yes, I could go to any number of amp part suppliers and buy a twin reverb board, eyelet board, and populate it, install it in the amp. But that's arguably the worst thing you could do. What we need to do is get a piece of FR4, which is a much thicker, stronger and more stable material. It doesn't absorb moisture. We'll populate that, we'll install that into the amplifier. It will never become conductive, it will never fail, and it future-proofs that amp forever. The board will outlast the rest of the components in the amp. So yeah, that's why. But welcome to the channel. It is a great question. Of course, if you didn't know the answer, it's a perfectly valid question. But stick around, you will learn stuff. Midnight Hour, welcome back, mate. He says, good luck for last Saturday. More on that later. A question for you. Do you have a special chair with good lumbar support for working at the bench? Or do you limit the amount of time sitting at the bench and purposely move around during the day? I have comfy chairs. Whether they have proper lumbar support, no. To be fair, my back rarely hurts sitting at the bench for a long time. The only time it does is when I'm filming time lapses, because I like to get over the work and look down on it. And when I'm filming, I can't do that, and so I'm naturally working in a slightly different position. That's when I notice I get a sore back. But I'm rarely sat down in one position for more than an hour, because I've always got phone calls to answer and emails to respond to, and people coming through the door or whatever. I'm always up and about doing stuff. So yeah, it's less of a problem. But I mean, I've done long periods at the bench anyway without issue. But yeah, that's all it is. I'm always doing something. In the last half an hour alone, I've probably been up 3 or 4 times because I didn't get enough components over from my stock. I keep forgetting to put stuff in there, so I've had to jump back out and get stuff. So yeah, it's just not one of those things. I mean, I've got comfy chairs, but I just don't really have a problem with it. So yeah, 220 picofarad. Ooh, there we go. Good question. Mr. Burtonshaw says, any tips on getting filter can caps for vibro champs? Pretty please. So those original Mallory cans, they're an odd size, and the chassis hole size is odd. Now, CE do make those replacement cans. In the UK, you can get them from Modulus Amplification up in Scotland. He stocks the correct one. I think he stocks a couple of different ones. Or you can order from abroad. They're the correct size. That's your solution. Now, some people say those things are unreliable and they've had failures. But I've never had one fail. And I've used hundreds of them. So maybe it's just the way I bring them up on the bench or whatever. But I rarely get electrolytic failures, other than ones that have been in the amp for too long and have just worn out, right? So those obviously, if you go onto any forum or any place like that, where somebody's had a failure, more people who've had those failures will naturally congregate at the same spot and say, well, I've had a failure too. So then you get these, I don't want to say rumours, but you get these consensus that things can be unreliable when really they're not. So yeah, go to Modulus. If you're in the UK, you can get them. Tad in Germany probably stock them, probably Tubetown as well, probably Banzai. Your Altone if you're in Scandinavia. But you can get them, probably eBay and Amazon as well. Once you replace it, soft start the amp on the bench. Make sure everything is nice and stable. I haven't put that resistor in yet, 270k. There she is. And you'll be fine. Question about my Chinese diesel heater install, which some of you really liked and some of you clearly think I'm an idiot and I've got no safety considerations or wearable whatsoever, which obviously isn't the case, honestly. I wouldn't have put a hot exhaust pipe through a wooden wall if I didn't do it properly and I didn't take the correct research precautions. And it's turned out a lot cooler going through that wall than I thought it would be. So it was a nice surprise. Anyway, Nigel says, why not route the exhaust through a small radiator inside before routing it outside? If the exhaust is as hot as you state, you are wasting a lot of heat to the outside. Yeah, I see a lot of people do this. They create their own heat banks, use the exhaust to heat water up and all sorts. There are lots of things you can do. Now, I did state in the video, Nige, that it's not meant to be a permanent installation. It's something that I only want to have going, for the 4 months of the year where it's really necessary to have an extra heating boost like that. It's not going to be running all the time. I'm never going to run it when I'm not here. It can be turned on remotely, but I'm certainly not going to do that. If I find it necessary to do that, then maybe I will. And it is a good idea, and I've seen other people do that. But it's probably overkill for what I need in here. If I didn't have the heat exchanger, the aircon heater unit on the wall, then maybe I would look at doing that. This building did used to have the IR panels. I think that's what they were called. And frankly, they were terrible. They were absolutely rubbish. I've got some of the big electric radiators, which are so expensive to run. It's comical. It is so funny how expensive they are. You can do nothing but laugh when they're on and you see how much power they draw. So the diesel heater is almost the perfect solution for this building. I mean, it doesn't get that cold. It's only because I sit still for a lot of the day. You know, I'm not outside as a labourer, am I? So I just want to be comfy, cosy. But yeah. Anyway, great question, Nigel. Here is a really interesting question from C. Gavin. I assume your name is Gavin. Chris, I have a question. Since you featured custom wound transformers, as you will know, the golden era, that one always makes me laugh, amps from Fender all had interleaved output transformers, and the not golden era to the present do not. I don't think that's true. I really don't think that's true. Although, what are you calling the golden era, and at what point the crossover is? I was recently quoted a whole day's labour for a custom wind interleaved and 2 hours for a non-interleaved. Is there a sonic benefit? All of the winders that I use interleave as standard. That's the standard process. That's what they do. As far as I understand it, and as far as it's been explained to me, they do it to help balance the load on the bobbin and the windings, and they just split it. So they'll do half of one side, a quarter of one side, quarter of the other, quarter of the next side, and like that, and they'll stack them interleaving, right? That's the standard way of doing it if you're putting out a quality product. So anybody who's not doing that, I would argue, shouldn't be winding your transformers anyway. The company I've just started using is doing an incredible job with the stuff they sent to me, all interleaved, and it's not that expensive. It really isn't. You can get quality stuff out there, good quality product, and there's not just the materials used, but the skill in the person winding the transformer for reasonable money. You don't need to be spending. I mean, if they're quoting a whole day's labour for that, unless they're literally winding it all by hand, then no, absolutely not. Don't be silly. Is there a sonic benefit? Yes, there is. Don't think of it as a non-interleaved transformer is your standard and then an interleaved one sounds great. Think of it as an interleaved transformer is your standard benchmark. That's kind of the minimum you'd expect, and something that's not is really cheap and nasty. So that's what you should be at from the beginning. If you're in the UK, give me a call or an email and I will put you onto a couple of really good transformer rewinders who certainly aren't going to rip me off like that. Well, that's it then, guys. Thank you very much for watching. Once again, as always, please give this video a thumbs up. All of your comments and questions down below. Subscribe and hit the notification bell if you haven't already. If you're feeling super generous, why not buy a t-shirt or join the channel like these guys have, and I will catch you all at the next one. Right, so how did racing go at the weekend? As some of you will know, it was the final round of the championship. It's gone quick this year. It was the sixth and final round of the championship at Donington Park, which has never been kind to me. Even the year that I won, I was involved in a crash. So it's never been good. And you know, I went there a couple of weeks ago and the car didn't even make it to the grid. So, you know, I was really hoping for a good race, and the weather was looking good. And in fact, on race day, it was cold and sunny, but it wasn't damp. It's the perfect Donington weather for October because it meant the track would be fast. And went out in qualifying, and you know within half a lap if your car is dialed in or not. And there was just grip everywhere. The car felt fast. The track felt fast. And I actually went 3.5 seconds faster than my previous best lap around there. That's the Grand Prix circuit, not the national circuit. Than I'd ever been around there before. 3.5 seconds I found in qualifying, which is insane because that's unheard of. Unfortunately, that was only good enough for third on the grid. The other guys actually found even more time and went faster. Now, admittedly, and I know this is a racing driver excuse, but I'm going to do it anyway. On my 2 fastest laps, I was held up at the 2 final hairpins. So I knew there was more time in the car. But qualifying is very different to the race. You end up with different fuel loads, track temperature changes. So it can be quite difficult to replicate that. And of course, in the race, by the time you get to the point where the car is at low fuel again, your tyres are in a different condition. So anyway, and I was fast. Qualified third, behind the 71 car, who, remember, I needed to beat on circuit. Whoever finished ahead of each other in the race would get second in the championship. First was out of reach at that point. But they were starting directly in front of me, I should say. And they were actually running as a relay team, which is allowed. So 2 cars, one car does the first part of the race, and then at the pit stops they swap over, which does have its benefits. One is that each car doesn't need to carry a full race's worth of fuel on board, so you get a weight advantage. And the second one, which actually happened, is that if one car breaks down and retires, the second car can go out and take its place, whereas if you're a single car team, obviously you can't do that. So they decided to run as a relay team. So the first car started. I'd overtaken him by the first corner. Almost got P1 as well. But within 2 laps, I was then leading my class and pulling away. So the car was just dialed in. I was dialed in. That gearbox really is on its way out there. I was struggling to get 5th gear sometimes, and then some downshifts, 4th was getting tricky as well. So I've got a spare gearbox and it will be going in, definitely over the winter, but I'm just trying to eke it out to the end of the season. Anyway, so yeah, leading the race after 2 laps, pulling away, gapping the rest of the guys, felt great. Brilliant. Loved it. Donington's never gone that well for me. Huge crash on the start-finish line by one of the upper class guys. So safety car comes out, and actually before that, the Peugeot broke down. The one of the relay cars broke down, and there was some confusion in their team about when the second car could go out. But by that time, they'd lost 2 laps. So that car is out of contention now. So now it's just me versus the yellow BMW for the class win. Now, they needed the win to stay in contention for the overall championship. But I really wanted that second win. I really did. So we pitted at the same time. They spot their driver, as they always do. They run a 2-driver team. And we came out of the pits together, and then he was chasing me down. We were having a really good, hard but clean battle. But unfortunately, he was clobbering the curbs too hard and broke his suspension and retired from the race, which you never want to see. It's not fun. It's not what you want. You always want to be racing people. You don't want a clear run to the end. But that's what I had. In the meantime, however, the 71 car team that I'm fighting for P2 in the championship, their second driver is lapping very fast, and of course is now in P2, which meant that if I did break down and didn't make it to the end, they would then inherit first and get second in the championship. So I did have to bring the car home, really struggling with that gearbox. I had a couple of moments at the chicane, especially when the upper classes were coming through, where I couldn't get a gear, almost went in the gravel, 2 laps on the trot, so that wasn't good. But I did it. I came home over the line in first. Very, very happy to get the second win in the championship of the season. 3K3. So, yeah, overall, pretty happy. So I secured second in the championship. Donington Park finally delivered for me in the way I wanted to. Had a great time. Now, interestingly, I actually scored more points overall than the yellow BMW over the championship. But because it's a drop score system, so you drop your worst score, their worst score was obviously a 0 points paying round, Donington Park, because they retired, where my worst score was 7 points, so I had to drop that, which means obviously I'm second in the championship. But I am the scratch winner in total points, so I'll take that. So my car has this championship at least has been pretty much bang on reliable. It was only in the other races I've done where we've had problems. So yeah, that's the way it went. Glad to get my second win. Got interviewed on camera at the end, which I'll put at the end of this video. So I'll put the highlights up. You can watch that. I'll put the link to my full race video in the comments, in the video description, if you want to go ahead and watch the full 45-minute race. But you don't have to. That's fine. But yeah, overall it was very good. So now I've got what have I got? 2-week wait until the Burkitt Relay. One of my favourite events of the year, the 6-hour race where we have a 3-car relay team. And as we get closer to that, I'll explain how it works. But yeah, second in class from the championship. In my first ever championship year, I've driven really well this year. I've come on leaps and bounds in terms of not just pace, but racecraft, driving standards, putting a race weekend together, all of it. It's been great. It's been really good. I've had a great time. So, yeah. And we found out that in terms of grid size, average grid size across the season, it is now the UK's biggest championship in its first year, simply because every grid is sold out. So, which is amazing. It's absolutely amazing. So yeah, I'm very happy, very pleased, thoroughly enjoying it. There are rumours that next year's calendar is incredible. Some incredible circuits. One more round as well, apparently. So it'd be 7 rounds, not 6. Which it hasn't been confirmed yet, but it's looking to be mega. So I can't wait till next year already. Now, my plan for next year is to obviously run the Mazda again, but I'm thinking there is one race which Snetterton, because I always go poorly at Snetterton, is that maybe I will take the BMW and race the BMW in that race instead. There's something about the combination of me, the Mazda, and Snetterton that just doesn't work, and it means I'm always slightly off the pace, and I don't know why. Now, if you keep doing the same thing, you keep getting the same result, right? Which has been the case. It's been the case. So something needs to change. Now, obviously, I'm not going to put a different driver in the car for Snetterton, although I could. So I'm going to change the car. I'm going to run the BMW in just that one race, I think, at Snetterton next year, just to see what happens. If I get the same result as I do in the Mazda, then that answers that question. But if I get a better result, then great. It worked, right? It's the benefit of having 2 cars. So, yeah. Anyway, Burkitt Relay in 2 weeks, and then we're off to Anglesey for the final race of the season. And that is my 2025 race season over. Although there are the Boxing Day races, which I'm really tempted to do. But we'll see. We'll see how that gearbox holds out. And we are having to put a new engine in the BMW as well. So I have to save up the pennies. Anyway, enjoy the highlights.
Okay, final round of the Road Sports Championship. It's quite simple. I need to beat the 71 car. It's a relay team. 205 in the first half. Swap into the Vauxhall Nova. Whoever finishes ahead at the end of the race gets P2 in the championship. Let's give it a go. Suspension failure, yeah? Big fan. I think I'm going to get interviewed on TV. It's a good job we used to call your band already this season. Obviously, I've got us going 6 rounds.
Yeah, Chris, come and join us. Well done to our Class D winner there. I think that's your second win of the year now in class, isn't it?
Yeah, I've been on podium all year. 2 wins, 1 second and 3 thirds, I think. Yeah, so it's been a good year. Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
You can't complain about that, can you, when the season got underway and everything's gone pretty much to plan. But in terms of Class D, do you finish as runner-up now?
Yeah, that cemented P2 in class for me. Best I could have done was 1 point off P1. So a couple of penalties at the start of the year hurt, but you know, I fought my way back, got a second win of the year, and really enjoyed it.
Did you know that the Adcocks had a problem because they unfortunately retired from the race? So that kind of brought that gap down, didn't it?
Yeah, I don't want to say I told you so, but he was wide at the old hairpin so many times. So it was either overdriving or he had a problem, and then half a lap later he started smoking. I could see it in the mirror, and he pulled off, which is a shame because we were having a good battle. But that's motorsport's the way it goes.
The good and the bad always, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Well done. Congratulations on your class victory. And let's bring in Matt Creed.